Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Sophie Show. Today we're going to have an amazing woman who's been married for 38 years, and she's going to tell us her experience and some of wisdom to guide all the young people in the couple and the young people who they're trying to go in that journey. So let's go meet her.
It's just that I need to be with you. Our love will last forever.
Hi, Miss Peggy.
Hello, how are you?
Nice. Good, I'm good. Alright. Thank you for being in the show.
My pleasure. I'm excited.
Yeah, we're so happy. I'm so happy to have you on my show, in the
Thank you.
Sophie Show. Yeah, and then we're going to ask you about your experience about marriage because you've been married for a long time.
Mhm.
Yeah, before we get there, if you don't mind telling us a little bit about you.
Well, I have lived in many parts of this country, and I've actually lived in Australia. So I feel like although I live in Lubbock, Texas, I've lived and had experiences with all different kind of regions of the United States, which makes me sort of a different kind of person sometimes.
I understand that part because
Yeah.
I've been living in a lot of places too.
Yeah, and it gives you a different kind of I think your worldview has to be bigger, and things that might upset other people
Yes.
don't upset you because you realize that, in the bigger picture, it doesn't really factor in as much as you might think.
Wow, that's very true.
Yeah,
That's
I have been married 38 years, but I got married very young. I was 18,
Wow.
and when I see other 18-year-olds, I think there's just no way you should get married when you're 18. I look at them like they're babies, but when you're in that situation, you feel like you feel like, oh yeah, I can do this. And I remember calling a family friend and telling her that I was getting married, and she was not happy, And I said, well, but I'm going to be 19 in like 6 months. Like that made a difference.
Yes. It didn't make it. Yes.
It doesn't. I mean, 18, 19 years, that's just young.
Yes.
But see, it's not too young. We made it work. And I think that that's more than the age of the person. When you get married, it's the commitment that you have to it. Even though your concept of that changes over time dramatically, if you're both committed to making it work, I think that doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Wow. So, how did you made it to 38 years or 30 years of marriage?
I think that you'd have
It's
to
38 years, right?
38 years,
Of
yeah.
marriage, yeah. How did you?
It's not a continuous amount of time. It's in stages. So as much as I was a teenager when I got married, I think from like 18 to 22 when I graduated from college was one approach. And I think early on in all marriages, especially when you're very young,
Yeah.
you know everything. No one can tell you anything.
Yes.
No one can, you feel, I think, just very powerful. And then, when you get a little bit older, you realize that that's not true, that you do need help. So from about 22 to about your late 30s I think it's a period of adjustment for both of you where you realize that you can make mistakes, that you do need help, and then, you wind up, as we did in marriage counseling, you reach out for help, and then as you get to be older, then there's this more wisdom that comes along, especially from being married to the same person for so long.
Yeah.
You really start to understand each other, and you really start to accept the other person with all of their faults.
And then you just mentioned something like you said you graduate, you married, you didn't graduate from college yet. So
Right.
you just graduate when you're in a marriage. Yeah, because some people, I heard like they say like you cannot marry before marriage, you have to be married, especially if you're a woman. Do you think that is true?
No. No, that I don't think is true. I think that, again, as much as there needs to be a commitment to marriage, there has to be a commitment to education.
Mm-hmm.
And my trajectory was even more unique in that I was married at 18. I had a baby when I was 20, and then graduated when I was 22. And so I think that it's all about your priorities. It's all about your idea of what's important. Is it having a nice car? Is it having a nice house early on? Is it nice, is it having disposable income? Or is it about staying together, working on your education, and working on your family, which was what it was for us.
Wow. How has your marriage changed over the years?
Well, it's like I was saying initially. I think all people, when they're, if you're looking at the kind of marriage that I've had, where you're married very young, and you stay married for a long time, there's an initial kind of excitement and kind of newness to everything, and then as you have children, especially, it can feel very difficult. There were times when I saw my husband for 45 minutes a day. He was in school and working, and I was working. You have to sort of deal with those issues and still find time to connect with the other person and mostly care about each other. And hopefully, if you're lucky, as I have been, you get to a place where it's not financially so difficult anymore. You can have some of the nicer things that you've always thought you could have, and still be together and have your family around you. So it changes a lot. It changes a lot. You have to be willing to change, and you have to be willing to let go of certain ideas that you might bring to the marriage that are not conducive to being in a relationship. You can't be selfish. I think it's important to look out for your own needs always, especially as a woman, but there's also a lot of thinking about the other person.
Okay, what was some of the challenge you faced in the marriage, and how did you overcome them?
I think the biggest challenge was when you're in school together, as we both were. It's a kind of an oddly protected environment. We lived on campus. We lived in married student housing, and everyone around you was a student, and you all shared that experience. And they had children, and it was a very there was a safety to it, and so that was, I was like 18, in my early 20s. But when my husband got his first job, he was 29. He was in Australia. I was 28. And I think that was the beginning of our new phase of marriage, because it was the real world. It was dealing with a salary that we thought was going to be bigger than it was. I was in another country. 3 small children, was not able to work. And so I think the challenge was that just dealing with shifting from being students to being real citizens of the world, and dealing with, all that entails. And it was hard. It was hard.
So how did you overcome them?
Well, I think it goes back to initially what your commitment is. The idea that is never like, well, this isn't working. You just don't go there, because it's not a productive place to go. And I kept thinking, and I think Jeffrey kept thinking, there's a goal. We had a shared goal. And I think that helped us through. We knew this was a hard time, but as an academic, he was going to be promoted and slowly have a bigger salary and have more opportunities to travel. It was a very intriguing and exciting part of our lives, was that he was doing field work in various places, and so we made it through, I think, by having a shared goal, a shared vision of where we wanted to be, and not ever thinking that it was an option to quit.
So when ended disagreement, and how do you come to understanding?
Um,
Time of disagreement.
Again, if you're asking me now, it's an easier process now because I've come to understand that I'm as much a part of the problem as he might be, and when there's a conflict, it's too easy to point your finger at the other person and be blaming. Whereas 20 years ago, I think it was simple and easy for both of us to sort of wind up in opposite corners. But I think all couples go through that, where it is very hard to hear someone say something to you that is critical, that you really listen to, and you really take, sort of dissect and say, well, maybe they're right. You know, it's hard. It's hard to do that.
Okay, I agree on that one. Even like with the sibling inside the house, and you know, it's kind of hard to agree. Like, yes, she's right, he's right. You know, just like I'm right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then you're in trouble.
Yes.
Because that only works for so long, and then eventually, no.
Yeah. So, okay. What are some way you communicate with your spouse?
Well, I think there's a lot of ways. I think that listening is a very important skill. And when I was younger, I had one idea of what listening meant. But now that I'm 57, I have a very different idea of what listening means. Listening is hard. To listen to somebody can be hard. And the reason I'm saying that is I think that to communicate with someone, you have to know where they're at. You have to know what they're feeling, and you have to care about that. And to do that, you have to be able to, I think, set yourself aside a lot. Sort of get out of the way and hear what they're saying, and just and not judge, and just let them be wrong, let them be right. It's just a matter of hearing what they have to say, and then wanting to move closer together. So I think that marriage is a process overall of coming together. It just slowly over time you get closer, and you get if you're doing it right. And it can take a long time. When people ask, how long does it take for you to be really comfortable and happy? It's an ongoing process. It wasn't that long ago that I might have been really angry with Jeffrey, But I think that that's just until you're gone, until you die. That's going to happen.
Do you think like marriage in the beginning is more trouble than staying longer? Like if you
Is it easier to be married when you're younger than when you get older?
Yes, like if you marry younger and it's like more easy to overcome those stuff, or like in the old age, you're just gonna be like, I'm staying just because I'm already old and something like that. What do you think?
Absolutely not. I think that that's what you want to avoid. You want to avoid getting to a place where you kind of don't really care. You want it to irritate you as much at 38 years of marriage as it does at 1 year of marriage. Because I think that shows how much you care about the relationship. And so, while I think over time you learn to let certain things go, you learn that, for example, maybe not calling when they're going to be late coming home. Maybe when you were younger that really made you mad. When you get older, you realize, well, you know, it's not that important. But I think that it's important to still have things that matter, that you're still working on, that you're still trying to come together on, and that are just as important and just as vital and annoying as they were in the beginning, because that means that your relationship is alive.
Yeah, and another question is you've been married for a long time, you know. So is it ever happened to you, like you having like argument or fight, like you feel like you have to pack your stuff and leave or come
But
back?
I've had his stuff,
Yeah, you.
and I put it outside the back door. And I really wanted him to come home and see it, and he didn't.
So you wanna pack your stuff, but you pack his
I
stuff.
packed his stuff. And then he never saw that I did it, because I kind of got scared, then I brought it all back in. So I'm not sure he ever even really knows that, but
Yeah.
no, I mean, and that tends to be, I think, toward the middle part of your marriage, when it's very confusing, and you've changed as much as you think you can, and he's changed as much as he thinks he can, and you kind of wind up in this just head-on point, and I think it's inevitable. And it is funny, but it wasn't funny at the time.
I'll pack your stuff. I'm packing my stuff.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
But I think that the important thing is to not follow through on that.
No, I'll do that.
Not really. But I will say that it is important to separate sometimes, even in another room, or even someone goes away, and that is what I think you change from young to middle age to older ages. You do understand that taking a break is healthy.
Like for how long break? Like.
Depends what the issue is.
So how can you?
I wouldn't say more than several hours. But if it comes to a point where there's a problem that you need to separate for a period of time, like maybe a few days, you need to have that sort of spelled out ahead of time. You're going to go to your friends for 3 days, and then at the end of 3 days we're going to get back together and we're going to talk about this. But I think it's important that it's a limited, and that you both agree on the amount of time. But separating can be very healing. You have to let things cool down. When they're too hot, when you're really angry, all you're going to do is you're just going to make it worse. So you have to kind of settle things down, and then maybe you can.
Do you have any advice for any young couples? Like, if you can give advice for any young couple, like anything, like wisdom from experience.
I hesitate because my marriage has been so unique to me, and so human and full of ups and downs. And yes, I've made it to this point, and I'm very glad and I'm very happy. But it's been a hard path, and I think that the only advice I could give was make sure that you want it to work. Not that you know how to make it work, but that you're willing to do anything you can to make it work. So don't be afraid to ask for help, especially. It's a big one. Don't be ashamed of any feelings that you're having that might make you feel like you shouldn't be married, or that you're not a good enough partner. Just stay connected as much as you can, and if you run into problems, reach out for someone to give you advice.
Thank you so much. We come to the end of our show.
This was
Thank-
fun.
Yeah, thank you.
very much.
Yeah, so that. Yeah, thank you guys. This is the end of our show, and I hope you guys get some wisdom out of Miss Peggy. What he said, she's been married for 38 years, and it's not little. So hopefully we all can get to that point, especially me myself anyway. So hey guys, stay in touch, and don't forget to subscribe. We have more story to come for life and any kind of thing. So yep, see you guys in the next video.